Welcome, ZASLOW Show 2.0. It is a Friday, the 10th of February. Good to have you aboard. We are a Blue Wire podcast. It is a Friday before the Super Bowl. We got a lot going on here today. We got a lot to get to. Glad to have you aboard as we wrap up another week of ZASLOW Show 2.0. That means I got my Johnny Cuba hat on. That means that right when we get done with the show today, I get to Johnny Cuba. I got a six-pack waiting for me downstairs. I'm going to take it right out back on the patio. We're going to crack that baby open. We're going to have a great start to the weekend. Look at that. That's a great-looking camo hat right there. Johnny Cuba, my guy Juan, sets me up with the gear. We got the hot sauce coming out soon. I've already got some. I mean, look, I get advanced copy of the hot sauce. Oh, my God. And I love hot sauce. I'll put hot sauce on everything, all right? I'll tell you more about that once it becomes available. But right there, Johnny Cuba, stay tranquilo. Beautiful looking hat. Of course, everything ZASLOW Show 2.0 is presented by our title sponsors from day number one. And that, of course, is Anidjar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Everybody knows that. If you got into an accident, if you're dealing with a personal injury, Anidjar and Levine Accident Attorneys, 800-747-FREE. That's 800-747-3733. Honestly, none of this is possible without my guys there. Mark Anidjar, Glenn Levine, Ellie Anidjar. Those are my guys there. They've supported me right from the beginning. So I'm super grateful. And that means I got to pass it along to you guys, all right? I trust them. And if you're dealing with a personal injury because of an accident, let them get you the money you deserve. 800-747-3733. All right, so we got to get to Super Bowl stuff, which we're going to. I don't know. Does the Super Bowl have a ton of juice to it? I don't know. I mean, look, we'll get there and it'll be exciting and everything, but man, the NBA has dominated this week. I kind of feel like the Super Bowl is a little bit of an afterthought. I mean, tonight, I don't think I have a ton go. Well, we got the Heat game tonight, so I'm dialed in on that. Heat and Rockets, we got to do post-trade deadline nothingness reaction as far as that goes. But we got the Heat tonight. You got the Panthers tomorrow. My son's got soccer tomorrow afternoon. That's very big. Western Select U14 boys. What? So we got that going on tomorrow. And then, then you got the Super Bowl on Saturday evening. So I kind of feel like the Super Bowl is the dessert for this weekend. We got a big meal planned over the next couple days, and then you got the dessert. Pretty good dessert. Super Bowl's good dessert. So then you got dessert with the Super Bowl coming up on Sunday. I don't know. I'm not sure the Super Bowl's got a ton of juice to it right now. Matter of fact, I got to be honest with you. Just this morning, and I love her. She's so fine. Just this morning, I realized, whoa, stop the clock. Is Rihanna doing the Super Bowl halftime? And the answer, of course, is yes, Rihanna. She is so fine. I love her. I'm very into the Super Bowl halftime show. Last year was when you had, it was Snoop and Dre and Eminem and Fitty, right? And Mary J. Amazing halftime show. Good way to find all the racists there, the people who thought the halftime show sucked last year. Great halftime show. And you got Rihanna this year. Everybody loves busting on the halftime show. How is it not going to be good? It's Rihanna. Oh, she's so beautiful. I can't wait for this halftime show. I'm very dialed into this halftime show. So once we get to the Super Bowl, I think I'll be into it. But right now, I don't know. I'm not feeling a ton of juice. And it doesn't have anything to do with us, but you're not at Radio Row. Who cares? I haven't been to Radio Row in, how many years did we talk? When Kobe passed away. So 3 years. And before that, I hadn't been to Radio Row in 8 years. So that has nothing to do with anything. Speaking of Radio Row, we're going to talk to Odyssey's Trista Crick. She's going to join us. She's killing it, okay? I see her everywhere on social media. We're going to go over some bets for the Super Bowl this weekend. She's got the NBA podcast she does. I think it's called Heat Check with Trista Crick, yeah? So we'll get into some NBA with her. I'm a big fan. Matter of fact, it's funny because right before I was let go from terrestrial radio, I was starting a weekly spot with Trista. We did one spot, and then the next day I was let go. So we'll get Trista on ZASLOW Show 2.0. I'm excited to talk to her. I'm a fan. So Trista Crick, Odyssey, Sports Betting, she will join us coming up. Hey, I got It's Still Real to Me. That's my wrestling podcast every Saturday. Sometimes we throw in some bonus episodes. Every Saturday, it's still real to me right here. ZASLOW Show 2.0, Blue Wire Podcast Network. So we'll cover all the big stories in pro wrestling this week tomorrow on It's Still Real to Me. My co-host is my pal, Joey Levine. Joey's going to join us on the show today. Not only, forget the pro wrestling part, he's our go-to MMA UFC guy. There's a huge card tomorrow, UFC 284. We'll talk a little bit about that with Joey. And most importantly, UFC 287 was announced this past weekend. It's coming here to Miami. Miami-Dade Arena, April 8th, UFC 287. The prices are going to be outrageous. So I want to talk about 287 and what we got on tap for that. It's less than 2 months away, excuse me. So my pal Joey Levine, he will join us coming up later on in the show as well. It's a Friday, so you know that means we got big game or not a big game. You're saying, Zazzle, I got to know what's going on this weekend. But we got some fun stuff to start with. We're going to get to the Heat. I know you guys want to hear my thoughts on the Heat doing absolutely nothing. Yesterday was a shit day. What other way is there to put it? We'll circle back to that in a second. But we got to essentially lead the show today with great news. Yesterday was a shit day because the Heat, the trade deadline, but it actually turned out to be a really good sports day. I went to bed yesterday really pleased sports-wise because, first of all, one of two things. First of all, Zach Thomas. Yes! Zach Thomas is in the Hall of Fame. Zach Thomas, after having been a finalist a couple times, he'd been on the ballot and was not a finalist a handful of times, and now he is going to be inducted as part of the 2023 Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm so happy for him. You go into my closet right there. Now, you can't go into my closet because you're not in the Zaslow Mansion master bedroom right now. This is where all the magic happens. But if you were in the Zaslow Mansion master bedroom, you can go right there into my closet. And I got a Zach Thomas Dolphins jersey, all right? I've had it since I was a kid. Zach Thomas, one of my all-time favorite players. I have 3 all-time favorite players. Everybody, and Marino's not one of them. Now, I love Marino, but I always felt like Marino's everybody's favorite. He's not going to be my favorite. I love him, but he's not my favorite. I have 3 all-time favorite Miami Dolphins. Sorry, I had to take a sip of my coffee here. And you'll notice none of them are like this current generation, if you will, because, I'm a grown-up now, and I don't really have favorite players anymore. But my 3 all-time favorite players, Brian Cox, O.J. McDuffie, Zach Thomas. My 3 favorite players. So one of my all-time favorite players, Zach Thomas, is going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm so happy for him. It's so deserved. I never thought it was going to happen. Now, there has been a momentum the last couple of years, but I started bringing up the Zach Thomas stuff. I don't know. I don't want to say I was the first one who started screaming and shouting about Zach Thomas not being in the Hall of Fame years ago, but I'll just tell you what I will say is I was the first one to scream and shout about Zach Thomas not being in the Hall of Fame several years ago. I got to do it. I'm so thrilled that he's in. So it was years ago, right, where Brian Urlacher, and maybe I started to kind of get into it when Jason Taylor went into the Hall of Fame. Now, granted, Jason Taylor is a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame. Although I'm not necessarily sure I thought Jason Taylor was a lock to be first ballot, but he got in first ballot. Obviously deserved. So I think at that point, I was like, all right, well, Zach Thomas, maybe we should be talking about Zach Thomas getting in. And then what really set me off, and you know this, what really set me off was Brian Urlacher. Brian Urlacher was not a better player than Zach Thomas. Brian Urlacher played on a better team than Zach Thomas. Brian Urlacher played on a team that made a Super Bowl appearance when Zach Thomas's teams always fizzled out in the postseason. Brian Urlacher gets in first ballot. And Zach Thomas can't sniff the Hall of Fame? You crazy? That made me nuts. So I really got on we got to get this train going. You put their numbers side by side. I mean, Zach Thomas, a 5-time All-Pro first team. I don't want to hear about Pro Bowl. I don't have the Pro Bowl numbers in front of me. Pro Bowl's bullshit. They did flag football last weekend. Pro Bowl's bullshit. All Pro is what you got to look at when you're talking about accolades, when you're talking about awards. All Pro. Zach Thomas was 5-time first-team All-Pro, 2-time second-team All-Pro. When you put their numbers next to each other, Zach Thomas's numbers are either the equivalent or better than Urlacher. And here's the thing, and it's not a small thing. I got to be fair. The one thing that Urlacher has on Zach Thomas, he was a defensive MVP. And that's not a small thing. But we're talking about the totality of a career, right? Right? The one thing Urlacher had is NFL defensive MVP. Zach Thomas does not have that. And he's not going to have that when he plays on, the team with Jason Taylor. Jason Taylor won MVP one year. But otherwise, you put together the numbers, you put them side by side, Zach Thomas's numbers are the equivalent and better than Urlacher. And Urlacher's first ballot, that made me nuts. I'm so happy for Zach Thomas. It's so deserved. He's going to give a great speech. The Dolphins will represent in Canton coming up in August. Maybe they'll be in the preseason Hall of Fame game. Like some of the other big names, you got Darrelle Revis there. I guess, what will the contingent be for Revis? It'll be Jets, right? It won't be Patriots. It'll be Jets. Joe Thomas, Cleveland Browns gets in. Who cares about those guys? It's about Zach Thomas, man. Dolphins will be well represented in Canton in August. It's so great. I'm so happy for him. And so the way they used to do it with the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and you've seen these videos before now, he's not like the president of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Dave Baker. You know who Dave Baker is, right? He's that giant of a man. He looks like Andre the Giant, but he's not running the Pro Football Hall of Fame anymore. But when he was, you remember it was a thing where I guess the finalists were wherever the Super Bowl was, and they would literally get a knock on the door. And you got the camera crew with Dave Baker. And if you heard that knock, not only are you a finalist, because that's why you're there, but you're getting in. And you would get the knock, and then the player opens the door, and it's Dave Baker. Dave Baker's there, and the player's there with his family, and he's so excited. It's such a cool moment. So I guess they don't do that anymore. Because last night when they announced it, I'm watching the Panthers game on the big TV, and on the small TV, I got the Pro Football Honors, show, whatever it was called, on Peacock. And all the guys who are being announced as in the Hall of Fame, they're all there. They all know they got in. So we're not seeing the moment that they learned that they're in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Now, we may eventually get some of that footage because the way they do it apparently now, it's not a knock on the hotel room door. Someone in the Pro Football Hall of Fame apparently shows up at your home with the camera crew. I'm sure they do interviews and all that stuff, which will air when they do the Hall of Fame induction. But that's how you find out now. And that's pretty cool too. So the way that it worked out for Zach Thomas, I was reading this morning, Armando Salguero wrote about it, who has been pitching Armando Salguero is one of the guys, and he's been pitching Zach Thomas for a while. You finally did your job, Armando. Come on. So Armando wrote about it this morning, and it was Jimmy Johnson. So Zach's family sent him out to run errands a couple Thursdays ago. And Zach gets home, he walks up the steps in his house, and standing up top there in the gold jacket is Jimmy Johnson. That's the guy. Either you would say Jason Taylor or Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Johnson's the guy. He drafted him. Jimmy Johnson's waiting up there, and Zach saw him, and he's crying, and, oh, man, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it, And so you saw last night, Jimmy, of course, announced him. Zach gives him the big hug. But that, of course, obviously was not when Zach found out. He's there to be announced in the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2023. So I'm sure we'll get some of that footage. I'm so happy for him. I am. I don't know what else to say. One of my favorite players. And it's taken such a long time. But you know what? This is one of those deals where I'll bet if you ask Zach Thomas, which would you have rather? Be a first ballot Hall of Famer or have to wait and now you're in? I guarantee you this way was better. I guarantee it. The longer it takes, and he doesn't seem like the type. He he never sounded bitter after not getting in. So it's not like he got angry and then eventually gets in. He never sounded bitter. I'll bet if you could ask him which would have been better, first ballot Hall of Fame or the way that it went down, you had to wait a little bit, and how special does this feel now? I'll bet he takes this version. Really cool. Really, really. I'm so glad for him. Anyway, so that's one of the good news. That's one of the good news from yesterday. The other good news, then we're going to get to the bad news, which of course is the Miami Heat. The other good news is, are the Florida Panthers putting it together? The Panthers last night, a good win against San Jose. They beat San Jose last night 4-1. This is the first 3-game win streak of the season, which is totally pathetic, but it also means, hey, are they finally putting it together? You got the win right before the All-Star break, a great come-from-behind win against Boston. Then 3 nights ago, they kicked the shit out of the Lightning. I freaking hate them. Vasilevsky, get the hell out of my city. And then last night, I guess come from behind me, they were down 1-0 after the first period, and they wind up beating the San Jose Sharks 4-1. Let me give you a little bit of what took place. So the Panthers go down late in the first period. They go down 1-0. Then in the second, they get the game-tying goal from Sam Reinhart, and then they take the lead late in the second.
After it, Ekblad knocked it out of the air and clears. Reinhart trying to get there. Carlson lost it to Lundell. Sent in front. Losterinen deflected. Score! Sam Reinhart, second of the night. And the first lead of the night for the Panthers.
Oh, that's a just textbook play with the Panthers. Less than a minute left here in the second period. You want to make sure you clear the zone. The Panthers were able to chip that puck, and they catch Erik Karlsson flat-footed, and how this play developed, and then a centering pass. Look at Loistereen, and he's fallen down, slips it out in front of the net. That's a set play. Reinhart knew exactly what he wanted to do with the centering pass. Just get it off the heel of his stick, and it went right through between the legs.
Hell yeah. So Sam Reinhart, his second goal of the game, second goal in the period, his 19th goal of the season. Remember the slow start that Reinhart got off to? Like the first dozen games he went without scoring. He's got up to 19 goals now this year. Really good job out of Sam Reinhart. That gives the Panthers a 2-1 lead. And then you got look, Bobrovsky's making big save after big save. This was a very good game. And so late in the third period, it's about 4.5 minutes left in the game. The Panthers take a penalty, a double minor. So pretty much the rest of the game now, the Panthers are going to be on the kill. And you know with around 2 minutes left, Sharks are probably going to also pull the goalie and make it a 6-on-4. And how about Eric Stahl with the shorthanded empty net goal?
Stahl brothers making the plays, and now Losterinen, ahead for Eric Stahl, shorthanded, empty net, you got it, 3-1.
Working together as a 4-man penalty-killing unit, 6-on-4, and the Panthers were able to just bobble up the Sharks right at the offensive blue line, the outlet pass and the empty net goal. Turnover, Loisterinen just feeds it up the Stahl.
That is the 450th goal of Eric Stahl's career. And the last 2 months, he has been huge for the Panthers.
So he's another one who wasn't doing anything the first part of the season. It took him, I don't remember how many games to get his first goal of the season. And it was like, okay, Reinhart, you know, is eventually going to get going. But Eric Stahl is kind of like, he might be done. He might be washed. Like, I think he was a two-way guy when they first signed him. They signed his brother Mark, and I think Eric Stahl was a two-way guy. So anyway, he then also gets another empty net shorthanded goal. So it's kind of deceiving where they were both empty net goals, but he scored 2 shorties yesterday, 2 shorthanded goals there for Eric Stahl. Like I said, kind of fugazi shorthanded goal because it was also with the empty net, 6-on-4. But Eric Stahl with a pair of goals. He has 10 now on the year. Sam Reinhart with a pair of goals. He has 19. Panthers win 4-1. Sergei Bobrovsky, 450 career wins. He's 3 back. He's one of only 25 goalies to win 450 games, and he's 3 away from tying the record for a Russian goaltender, which is former Sharks goalie Evgeny Nabokov. So he's going to get that this year also. And the Panthers win their 3rd in a row for the first time this year. Are they finally getting it going? Because, all right, it's one thing to beat the Sharks, and the Sharks have struggled a bit this year. I mean, you know, the Sharks are not one of the better teams in the league. They're actually not good. But the wins against Boston and Tampa, it doesn't get much better than wins against those teams. So are the Panthers finally starting to put it together? I feel really good right now about the Panthers. Now, they're back up. Next up is tomorrow night against Colorado. Now, the Avalanche, while they're the defending Stanley Cup champion, they're not quite the team that they were last year. It's been a little bit struggle city for the Avalanche. They've come along of late, but they're third in the Central Division, all right? They're playing much better lately. Another big test for the Panthers tomorrow, and here's where they stand, okay? Panthers have 58 points. They're 26, 22, and 6. 58 points. They are 1 back of Pittsburgh for the second wildcard spot, 1 point back, and 2 points back of Washington for the first wildcard spot. But here's the thing. It's a little bit fugazi because you got to look at the games played. The Panthers are 1 back of Pittsburgh, but the Penguins have 4 games in hand. So they could potentially be 9 back of Pittsburgh. Now, does that mean Pittsburgh's going to win all 4 of those games in hand? No, but you understand what I'm saying. So that number's a little bit fugazi. They're actually a lot closer to number 1 Washington because the Panthers are 2 back of Washington and the Capitals only have 1 game in hand. So the Panthers are in striking distance of both those teams. Again, tomorrow night, Panthers, and Avalanche. Now we got to get to the bullshit, all right? Now we got to get to the shit from yesterday. And I know the Heat fan is all kinds of mad because the only thing that's going to wind up coming out of this trade deadline is the Heat are going to convert Orlando Robinson to a standard NBA contract, and it's going to be greeted with a collective yawn by the Heat fan. All right, so the Heat do absolutely nothing yesterday. We're going to get to more of this with Trista Crick, Odyssey Sports. We'll do some of the betting with her, but also we'll do a lot of NBA with Trista. So the Heat do nothing at the deadline. Yesterday's deadline sucked. And you know why it sucked? Because like a dope, I'm sitting around refreshing Twitter for like 2-3 hours, waiting for something, anything, and nothing happened. Now, you had a lot of moves out there. All kinds of moves. All kinds of names were moved. The one that stood out to me the most, you know, as far as contenders go, Jay Crowder, and this news broke late in the show yesterday, late in ZASLOW Show 2.0 yesterday. I actually was able to include it in Big Deal or Not a Big Deal. Jay Crowder goes to Milwaukee as part of the whole, you know, Phoenix Kevin Durant deal. So Jay Crowder goes to Milwaukee. There you go. Otherwise, like I saw, Boston brought back Daniel Tice. They love bringing back big men that they had before. Brooklyn, Brooklyn didn't make any additional moves. They got a bunch of wings, and they won last night. They beat the Bulls. Bulls are bad. Bulls are not good. Bulls didn't make any moves either. And the Hawks made some moves out there as well. The Raptors didn't do anything. The big move to me, though, was the Warriors traded James Wiseman. The Warriors sent James Wiseman, I think it was a 3-way deal with Atlanta, right? Atlanta got Sadiq Bey in this deal. Detroit got James Wiseman, who is a major bust. They traded 5 second-round picks to Golden State for James Wiseman. Major bust, James Wiseman. Major missed opportunity for Golden State. They had the number 2 overall pick because you had the year with Thompson and Curry hurt. You get those guys back and you have the number 2 overall pick. And a few years later, he played a total of 60 games for you, and you trade him for 5 second-round picks. Number 2 overall pick or 5 second-round picks. That's a major, major strikeout for the Warriors. And essentially what they did was they then used those 5 picks to send to Portland to bring back Gary Payton. So they really traded James Wiseman for Gary Payton. All right, and look, that's a good move. It's a good move for Golden State. But it's a major strikeout for them. You know what it reminds me of? James Wiseman reminds me of Darko Milicic. It's a very similar scenario. major bust at number 2 overall, both players. And the Warriors only got that number 2 overall pick because of the injuries the year before. And you're adding a player at number 2 overall to an established championship contending team. Darko Milicic in the 2003 draft. Remember, LeBron went 1, Milicic 2, Carmelo 3, Bosh 4, Wade 5. Love Dwayne Wade. Milicic went number 2 overall to Detroit. Detroit had the number 2 overall pick, not because they were bad the year before. It was through a trade. I forget who the trade was with, but it was from a trade. So an already championship contending team, they ended up winning the championship in 2004, but they were making some conference finals appearances. Milicic's rookie year, they won the championship, the Pistons. Milicic was added to an already established championship contending team, never worked out. Never got the time, just never developed. Wiseman, Milicic, very similar scenario to me. Major bust. So that was the one that really stood out to me the most because, obviously the night before, you had the Durant trade. Phoenix, obviously, I think they're the championship favorite now. I do. And Durant's better when he's not a leader. He's not a leader. Durant's better when he just joins a team that's already established. We saw he fails as a leader. And you had the Laker deal. And the Lakers did a couple more moves yesterday, too. I really like what the Lakers did. They traded away Pat Beverly. They brought in some size with Mo Bamba. The Lakers really reshaped things. So, and then LeBron sat out. You can't expect him to play 2 games in a row. Then he sat out last night. So, Lakers are now 5 games under 500. 5 games under 500. Shouldn't LeBron be out there playing and trying to win these games? Just sat out last night. I don't get it, man. I've been harping on this all year long. What am I supposed to say? So, the Heat do absolutely nothing. And, look, I was hopeful, but it didn't feel like they were going to do anything because the only way, and I'm explaining this to my son yesterday, it's like, oh, Pat Riley doesn't do anything. He's on that train. Pat Riley sucks. Pat Riley's washed. My son's on that train. The only way for the Heat to do anything significant, to add anyone significant, you're going to have to send out a lot of money. You're not going to get back a player who's worth anything if he doesn't make any money. And that means you got to get a team to take 1 or 2 players. Duncan Robinson, who no one seems to want and is hurt, and Kyle Lowry, who no one seems to want and is hurt. No one wants Lowry. No one wants him. He's a total bum at this point. And I don't know if his knee is really hurt. Watch, he'll probably be back in the lineup tonight. Trade deadline pass, he's good to go. He sat out just to make sure teams don't try and trade for him. I thought Jimmy kind of gave the go-ahead after last game that he's okay. I played that sound for you yesterday that he's okay if the team winds up moving on from him. He's still my boy, but, I don't know what's going to happen. Whatever happens, happens. We got no control of that. I thought that was Jimmy kind of giving the go-ahead. I think the Heat desperately tried to move Kyle Lowry, and you just can't convince a team to take a player of that caliber who also has another year under contract at $29 million. Now, in the summer, will the Heat be able to move Lowry? Probably. It becomes an expiring contract at that point. Maybe you got to attach a first-round pick to it. I don't know. But whatever it takes to get rid of Kyle Lowry over the summer, you're going to have to do. That contract, moving Lowry becomes a lot more attractive to other teams when it's the last year of the deal. Look at Russell Westbrook being moved. Speaking of which, Russell Westbrook's wife had to come out on social media yesterday and explain to everyone that Westbrook is not a vampire. She had to actually explain. She thinks that people think that he's a vampire. She had to explain he's not a vampire. And of course, the reference being he sucks the life out of you. And then she chastised the media and she chastised ESPN. Hey, get a clue the way things work here. Someone in the Lakers organization, maybe a teammate, maybe LeBron, someone in the Lakers organization called Westbrook a vampire. The media didn't call him a vampire. If a Laker teammate or someone in the organization calls one of their players a vampire who sucks the life out of you, the media needs to report that. Get a clue. But Westbrook's wife had to go on social media and let everybody know that he's not actually a vampire. It's so stupid. I'm sorry. It's so stupid. But back to the Heat. I do feel bad for Duncan Robinson. That's why you feel bad for Duncan Robinson. Like, fans are mad at Duncan Robinson with really no reason to be mad at Duncan Robinson. You got to be mad at the Heat front office then, which I'm not mad at the Heat front office over Duncan Robinson. I'm mad at the Heat front office over Kyle Lowry. I'm not mad at the Heat front office over Duncan Robinson. Kyle Lowry is an all-time awful trade, and he's a terrible player. Duncan Robinson, if they would have just let first of all, Duncan hasn't done anything wrong. Like, if you're Duncan Robinson and they're offering you $90 million, you got to take it. Like, Duncan didn't do anything wrong. And the Heat fan is definitely so mad at Duncan Robinson. So I kind of feel bad for Duncan Robinson. But here's the part that the fan doesn't always understand, because look, there's a lot of minutia when it comes to salary cap and that kind of deal. If the Heat did not sign Duncan Robinson, they weren't going to be able to use that money on someone else. They had Robinson's bird rights, so they could either keep him and add to their cap number. I mean, they were already over the cap. You want to stay under the tax. They could either keep him or they could let him walk for nothing. But it wasn't let him walk and then add somebody else. They were already over the cap. So rather than let him walk for nothing, you have to create that salary slot. And now they have a $20 million salary, $18 million salary slot from Robinson. Why is that important? Because you could use that in trade now. Now, no one's traded for it right now, but eventually someone's going to trade for it. And if you let him walk, the only big trade, the only big salary block you have to trade of players that you want to trade is Lowry. Now they also have Robinson, who they could put in a deal to try and get a big-time player. If you just let him walk, you don't have that salary slot. Now they have that salary slot. It didn't take up cap space. They were already over the cap. And eventually they're going to be able to use that, hopefully, to get a good player in return. Maybe on a team that's bad, maybe you got to attach a first-round pick to it, I don't know. But you re-signed him for two reasons. One, you thought he was going to continue to get better. He is not. Two, worst-case scenario, you're using the salary slot in trade later on. You had to re-sign him. It was actually a no-brainer. Anyway, the Heat are going to be scouring that buyout market. You know, teams like Phoenix, they're going to be at the front of the line. The best teams in the league are always the ones who are going to be the big attractive places when it comes to the buyout market. Are the Heat going to be an attractive place? Hey, John Wall's about to be released. Westbrook could be released. There was one other point guard I'm thinking of, or that I was thinking of. I can't remember. There are a few point guards out there who, hey, you want to play somebody else over Kyle Lowry? I don't think the Heat are going to do something that drastic. I put out the ZASLOW Show 2.0 poll question yesterday about Westbrook. A lot of fans were in on bringing in Westbrook just to shake things up. But the Heat are going to be all over that buyout market. Does that mean they're going to bring someone in? Does that mean someone's going to agree to come to a team that's in 6th place, maybe 5th place? Instead of going to a team like Phoenix, who's right at the top, a team like Denver, who's right at the top, a team like Milwaukee. I don't know. I mean, the Heat may strike out there also. But yesterday was a super frustrating and disappointing day. Just checking Twitter and nothing coming of it, man. Just can't get anything done. The Heat get an F yesterday. Now, you need 2 to tango. You need another team to agree to make this trade. I preach that to you. It can't just be turn off the computer assistants on NBA 2K and Riley can make whatever moves. But the fact of the matter is, the Heat, they needed to make a move. They forget the Deadman, or forget about that. They haven't made a single move to improve the team since the end of last year. That's frustrating. I understand the Heat fan being pissed off about that. And if the Heat are trying to make moves yesterday, which they were, and they didn't come up with anything, it came up empty, yeah, you get an F. The Heat had an F in the offseason for not being able to get anything done, and they get an F at the trade deadline. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not going to be able to do some damage in the playoffs. I do believe they're going to be able to do some damage in the playoffs. I mean, this Heat team, with the way Bam's playing, Jimmy's an all-time playoff performer. You think Philly wants to see the Heat in the first round of the playoffs? Like, the Heat can totally win a playoff series. They're going to be a massive, we talked about it yesterday with SiriusXM NBA Radio's Brian Geltzeiler. Go back and listen to that if you want. The Heat are going to be a major pain in the ass. Even without doing, that's why it's not like all hope's lost. Still got a team that's good. Not great. You got a team that's good, who is very much trending in the right direction, like they always do in the second half of the season. So there's still going to be a massive pain in the ass for someone in the playoffs. But after getting an F in the offseason, they get an F at the trade deadline yesterday. There's no other way to put it.